All right, welcome back to today's series. We are going to be pushing on to install Active Directory domain services. So our prereqs are on the left, everything we need to do to get our box up and running, and then we're going to jump into the install. So without further ado, just look at the screen. We have to install a server. So if you have any type of server, you can install Active Directory. It comes built in, whether it be Windows Server 2003, 2005, 2008, 2008 R2, 2012, 2016, I think 19, and then 22, and then I think we're in 25. And then server needs to be updated, which is a good best practice. We'll assign it an IP and configure it, and then also give it a good name before we move on. Make sure you have admin rights to the server. We need to have domain rights to do this, and then we'll jump into the install, which is on the right. We'll do the roles, promote it, verify the installation, and then that will be a wrap up for this version of the video. So without further ado, we are about to jump into our installation process. So you would like to obtain a copy of Windows Server, depending on which one you're using. I will put a link in the description if you wanted to get a copy from Microsoft, which is where I recommend you get it. It's a clean copy, and also you can test it out to play around with it in the sandbox. I'm using Proxmox, so I'm going to go ahead and click Start and get my system up and running. Pressing the key to continue. So this is how you'll start off the box. And this is the beginning of installing the server piece. So right here, we're going to run through, click Next, accept the keyboard settings. And then we're going to install Windows Server. So let's click I agree and then click Next. We're going to do 2025, the desktop experience. So this is a part when you see desktop experience, it has a GUI, the graphical environment or the graphical interface, right? Click Next, accept the EULA, which is basically reading all of this stuff. And then we're going to go ahead. It's going to scan for the disk. I have a 60 gig drive that I'm going to be playing with for this. What I like to do from here, I like to go ahead and create a partition. So it creates the necessary extra partitions that it needs to allocate to this drive. So there you go. We partitioned it for 3. And then you have the system, and then the MSR reserve, and then the primary. Now we'll install on the 59.9 and click Next. And then read all of this. When you're ready, you're going to click Install. And then now we're installing Windows Server. Once it passes this initial phase, it will go ahead and do some updates. As you can see, I'm at 42%. Then it will restart a few times, and then we'll be back into the screen. All right, so we are back on the main screen. It has been successfully installed, so we need to go ahead and put in an administrator account. This is a local account that you're going to use to administer just this server box. So let's go ahead and add an account password that we can remember. Please remember your password, it's super important. And then we're going to go ahead and click Finish. Once you're on the main screen, after you put your password in, now you need to log in for the first time. And it's going to log in. Go ahead and accept. I'm going to close this out, and then we are into our server is up and running. I'm going to let this load for a little bit. There's a few things that like to populate on the first time the server manager starts up. So now we can go ahead and check off on our box that we have installed server. So let's go ahead and put a little color into here. That means we're good to go. We have successfully installed the server. So we did a few updates, but we could go ahead and check updates now. Then we're going to also assign an IP address. And then we already know that we do have admin rights on the server, so we can go ahead and check that off as default. So now let's move on to the next phase. So we're going to go ahead and give an IP address to this box. So let's go ahead and IP it. We're going to go ahead and go to Ethernet. You can do edit right here and do it this way. Scroll down, you'll see that it's assigned by DHCP, and then also you have an automatically assigned address already. So that's one way that you can do it. You can also right click and go to network settings, and you can go to advanced, and then also you can do it up here as well, and do edit from this part, and then go to TCP/IP properties, and then we can assign an IP address here. So I'm going to go ahead and do a 192.168.1. Let me check my cut sheet to see what IP address is available. So since the DHCP already gave this 205, I'm just going to go ahead and give it the same one, but I need it to be static. And then I'm just going to leave everything the default the same, because I do have additional networks running on the same environment. We're going to leave that as 1. And then right here, the DNS, don't worry about it, because once you install Active Directory here, it will get the DNS itself will point. So we'll just click OK. We're going to click close. And then we also need to do one more thing. We need to go ahead and rename the computer itself. So you can click start and then go to rename your PC. And this right here, I don't like this long name that Windows gives it, so I'm just going to call it, I'm going to rename this right here. So we're just going to do lab, and we're going to call this DC01, which is okay. Click next. I'm going to ask you to restart. Right now we can do a restart here, and then we'll sign back in and continue on. Now we're just running through it to make sure that I have all the updates necessary available. This is not a must, but it's just something that I like to do as a best practice. Just keep your system updated first before you start doing a lot of the changes. It could be a tedious process, but hey, it doesn't hurt. Once you run through your updates and you're happy with the process, we can go ahead and start the next phase. I just have one update left for this piece, so I'm going to go ahead and do my updates, and then I'll restart my box. But like I said, this is not a necessary process. I just like to keep my system updated before I move forward. You can always try to skip this step. Alright, so now it's time for us to go back and do some highlights. So let's check off our list. We ensure that the server is updated. And I think this was a typo. Server is updated, then updates. Should be patched, then updates. My apologies. And then we also gave it a static IP. So we can go ahead and check that off. So we're good to go. So now we're going to be working on the right side, which we're going to install the Active Directory and get that started. Alright, so we're back on our box, and how we do, or how should we start? So add roles and features is right here. You can always click in the middle, or you can always go up to the top and do manage, and then click add roles and features here as well. After you've installed the role and features, it will show up under the tools section. So everything that's right here is already locally built in or already installed for you, like the file services. Just a partial piece of it though. So we're just going to go ahead and click add roles and features, and let's begin. So let's click next, and then click next here, and let's bring this down to the middle so you can see a little bit. So the name is already set. We did give it a name, and it does have an IP address, so that is good to go. We're going to click next. This verifies just that everything is good to go for this server before we get started. So it takes a few seconds to configure here. thinking a little bit. All right, on the next screen, so we're going to be doing a few things. So Active Directory, like I said, ADDS is what we're going to work on. So we're going to click on this box and add the necessary features that comes with it. Management tools. As you can see, you do have a few additional stuff for Active Directory. We're not going to get into these yet because we haven't even covered half of these when it comes to Federation, Certificate, LDS, and Rights Management. Those are for different videos. DNS, you want to add your DNS with your box as well. And it's going to say, well, no static IP, which is weird because I did give it one. So let's go ahead and check to see if this was happening. So let's go ahead and open this back up. And let's go to advanced. And it does show that I have an IP address. Oh, something went wrong. So let's give this back 192.168.1.205. Maybe I didn't save it properly, I'm not sure. Click OK and click close. And let's minimize this. And let's click cancel, and then let's do this again. So I know for sure it is, so we can go back to the previous. Let's click next. I can uncheck this just to verify and then recheck it. But as you can see, I just added in the IP address. So you'll get this error because of the whole process. So what we can do, we can start over the process just so I can check it properly for validation process. So I just ran through just to make sure that my IP address is set so I wouldn't get that error or get flagged. So I just verified it real quick, open it back up, and I'm just going to minimize this, and then let's run back through the process here and go back to where we were to validate right there. So ADDS right there, DNS, add features, then get the arrow, and then click next. So this right here is saying I have a pending restart. Something is probably pending right there. And this is where I was saying if you had updates, take care of them first before this happens. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel this just to do it the proper way. Restart this so if whatever updates were not finished, and then we'll be right back. Alright, so the restart has been completed. So let's go ahead and continue where we left off. So now we can click ADDS, add the features, and then DNS, and add. Shouldn't have no errors like we had before because we fixed the IP address. And click next. And then next from here. One thing I wanted to show you though, everything that's here is just additional features that you can always install alongside this pool. But right now we're just going to focus on Active Directory. Once we start building out additional features and roles, you'll see that we'll go inside of here and click some stuff. So a feature complements a role. So sometimes a certain role will have a certain embedded feature that goes with it. So for example, when I clicked DNS earlier, you notice it brought in a few features that allows it to expand and work properly. Same thing with ADDS. So every time you click something, if this is your first time, you will notice that it will say, hey, if you want this, then this comes with it as well, and you will need it for it to perform properly. All right, so go ahead and click next. GPO is normally installed with this as a feature with Active Directory because you also need group policy management, a part of the domain role. You can always uncheck this, but it's not recommended. Not recommended at all. So you want to keep this check and then you keep going forward. Click next. You can do this with Azure on this new build. We're working on Server 2025. So basically, you can integrate 365 and Active Directory Connect right here if you're trying to do everything on the cloud. Since this is an on-prem build and it's a local lab, we're going to skip this and keep going to the next step. Once we get into Azure later, if we build out an Azure platform, I'll show you how all of that works. Now you can read this. It's just going to tell you about DNS and what DNS does for the server and how it can be integrated with JCP and all that good stuff. Right. Once you finish reading this, just go ahead and click next. Now I like to click the restart because sometimes once you build out AD, it might request you to install. A good thing from here, you can export in configuration settings. So if you do want to export this, you can click deploy configuration, the template, and save it as an XML file. And basically what does that look like? So if we go into, where did we export it? To the desktop, I believe. No, downloads, down, documents. Where did we put it? Let's go to our desktop and save it right there. And then I'm just going to go to our desktop and show you right here. This file you can open it up with, and we're just going to go to Notepad. And basically what you're looking at right here is all of the commands and every function that we selected during the install is basically here. So as you can see, the name of the computer is Lab01 right there. So this is like the metadata that's configured. If you come down, you can see the hash tables and everything that's being installed, what's about to happen, DNS strings is coming through, and all that stuff, right? Everything that you selected earlier during the install will actually show here. So if you're going to redo this or do this again, you can actually use the information that is stored inside of this configuration table to really build out another instance without having to go back through. If you scroll all the way across, or you can just turn on word wrap, you'll see more additional things here. It's a little bit hard to read, but if you know what you're looking for, all of the details are actually embedded here. I'm just going to go ahead and click close and click close. Now, once we're here, we're just going to go ahead and click install, and we're going to let this run through, and we shall be right back. Okay, so once the box is finished, if it doesn't require a restart, you can go ahead and click close. But I want you to look right here. It says promote this server to a domain controller here. And then if you look up to the top right, you'll also see a notification. These notifications will also tell you the same thing. If something is required, you will see this yellow triangle letting you know that there's also something that's needed. So let's click close right here, and then let's go back to our triangle, and we're going to do promote this server to a domain. Now back in the old days, you could have did what's called a DC promote for the promotion. I think it's called DC promo, and that's like old school way. But now with the new modern versions of Windows Server, it's basically just a GUI click. So what we're going to do is start from scratch. Since we do not have a forest, right? The first built out will have to be a forest because we don't have one. So if you look at the top, it says add a domain controller to an existing domain. We don't have a domain to add one. Add a new domain to an existing forest. We don't have an existing forest. So we have to start off at the top level and build out a new forest. And this is going to be the root. So let's call this homelabs.local. Okay, and then let's click next. So accept the default. Earlier when I was showing you, there were a few things I talked about during the build about the levels. So the DNS server is here, and then the global catalog is also a part of this build. This is not an RDC container because we talked about that before, right? So we're going to make sure that the global catalog is also on this box, and also it's a DNS server. Now this password is called the DSRM password. It's pretty much for recovery mode. In case you have to go back and do some reconfigurations for your directory services, it might ask you for this password. So before we jump into it, like I was saying about this password, so This password is used to access Windows Server in case of emergency, or if you have to do a restore mode or do like a special boot where you have to perform like maintenance or recover certain tasks in Active Directory when the normal mode is not working. So you want to make sure that you remember this password because it is a separate from the regular domain administrator password. It is not the same one that you set before. So this is very important when you're building out this domain. You know you have this password set and it's securely managed and only given to a few people. Now let's go ahead and click next. Once that's covered, click next. The net bias now will be assigned, so you should only see home labs because normally it drops anything after the dot. So that would be a net bias. So there you go. So that means you can always type in just home labs because of the net bias and it will still find it. All right, click next right here. All right, so if you remember earlier when we talked about the build out, I told you that the database, remember we talked about the database, right? So all right, so I wanted to go back and touch on this. Before, in the video before, we talked about the database. Now, this is where you're going to see it actually takes place. Remember I told you that the ntds.dit is actually the name of the database that's going to be built. And then it's going to also configure it into these partitions, right? So this is what's happening right now. The NTDS database is about to be built out because we're building this domain controller. So right here now, when you look at C Windows NTDS, this is the location of where the Active Directory database is going to be installed. I hope that kind of makes sense and clarify from the previous video. Now let's go ahead and click next. You can see everything here. Now, one good thing about this for the folks that like PowerShell, you can also go ahead and view script and you can leave this or save this right here, because then this will be the way that you can also deploy through PowerShell. If you wanted to save this, save it as take the space out because I don't like using space. We're going to save this to the desktop for later on. And you can use that script again, right, to actually configure this. We're going to click next and continue. And then now it's going to go through the prereqs and verify that it has everything that it needs before ADDS can be installed. Once you get this, this should be good. So all prereqs have been passed or has passed successfully. So you can click install. Whenever you see this about the delegation for the DNS server, that is okay. It's just letting you know that there's not a parent zone found and there's no previous DNS server there. So you're going to be integrating a new one for the first time and it's going to create it and all that good stuff. All right, so it tells you right here, otherwise no action is required. Don't be alarmed, just click install. Once your server has been done and it's restarted, you should see a difference now on the login screen. You should see the domain name that you created /administrator. If you don't see that, that means you log on to the wrong box or it didn't install properly. Now, before when we started, it was just administrator. So now this is your domain admin. And remember the passwords that you set. You need to make sure you can log in to get into your box. So this is one way to note that you're logging into the right box as before. And your regular admin account now is just basically promoted to a domain admin account. Once this is installed, you can check a few things. So you can look over here to the left, you'll see ADDS is installed and also DNS. Right here, you can go to tools and you can click on Active Directory users and computers, and you can see that your Active Directory box has been built out. So that's a success right there. And you can also go to DNS and you'll see that DNS is also installed and up and running. So one thing I wanted to show you, going back to the database, once you go to this PC C drive, under Windows, you should look for a folder called NTDS, which is right here. So this is where the files were loaded earlier that we talked about. And if you go inside, you can see that ntds.dit file. If you notice the size of it, it will continue to grow the bigger your domain structure gets. Now you can also open up this file inside of your PowerShell window. If you wanted to do configurations, you can do ntds, I think it's util, and then it will bring you also into the ntds util. Inside of here, you can do a lot of functions with Active Directory. This video is not for this purpose. I just wanted to show you where we at, and once we start doing additional things with NTDS util, our utility tool, this is how you'll get there. But just know that you can clean up metadata here. You can transfer FSMA roles. There's a lot of stuff you can do. You can do a restore. You can change the password for the admin user, and so much. So basically, this is like a great tool for your Active Directory maintenance box. You can go maintenance modes and do a lot of stuff as well. It is very, very, very powerful for your box. If you do run into problems as well, you can go in here and also create snapshots and do stuff like that. But for the case of this video, we're not jumping into anything with NTDS util. I just wanted to show you where the database lives and what you can do with it moving forward once we get into the bigger videos. All right, moving back onto Active Directory. So we are in here. Our first Active Directory is built out. And this is what I wanted to show you. At the top level, you have right here that was built out, right? This is the top level of your domain. If you go into properties, you'll see that the labs, the name that we did, we gave it was Home Labs. It was created up here by local. And then everything here is built out by default. These are the default containers that are built in with Active Directory. All right, so we're back into the Active Directory users and computers. One key thing I wanted to show you, so you see how all of these are similar, but this one container is different. So, well, it's actually an OU. So the little icon inside of this is basically saying that Active Directory signifies that this is a special OU and it's designed specifically for domain controllers. So this unique little icon inside of it, it just applies to this OU, and I've always wondered what it is until I had to figure it out. So domain controllers are supposed to stay inside of here, and if you move domain controllers out of here, you can run into significant issues later. But everyone's build is a little different. However, the little icon inside though was supposed to be because it distinguished itself from other OUs and objects within Active Directory, so that like as an administrator you can easily identify or differentiate that container or that OU from the other type of objects. Pretty cool, right? You learn something every day. But anyways, our Active Directory box is built out. We're going to pause this video and then dive into setting up and configuring later into the next video. But now that our box is up and running, I think we are good to go for this video. I want to keep all these sessions basically under 30 minutes. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next video. We'll dive deeper into it. I hope you learned something from this round, and we're going to just keep pounding the pavement and keep going. Catch you later.